Well, there seems to be some constitutional crisis, or is there? It has deepened as the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, has urged members of the NDC in Parliament to not show up in case there is any recall. And this casts doubts on whether Parliament is going to be able to sit before the December 7 elections. We're going to be interrogating this matter. What are the implications for the economy, governance, and our democracy? We'll start from Parliament. We'll also look at the EC and the entire situation in the Ahafo and Volta regions, together with the Kufuor, pitch in recent times for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and the reaction of the Laidam. All of that is on our chopping board this morning. But first, I want us to take a look at that video where Johnson Asiedu Nketia made those comments.
Wamuya kontokrani jaji for ekase say say ajuma of parliament ho mo kotra ho abanu begu ni ada ababia move foko they say NDC MP for go obia ye emergency recall a e mo obia ti ho na ya ko toaba ya to abawia mama Ghana for ntia say wo mo energy democracy ho ya leaders say all parliament ni nyina ya to abada o mo samra ya NDC so ya ma MPs dodo amaka ho ya time nkoni democracy na nyina ho ya kasa democracy ebe jana na so a we parliament free wa asa democracy be any baby and until or maybe money kamibe mkabi amambo asase munyira mo sorry na mo bomb parliament home by the parliament who we keep parliament ya let us say democracy no ahead attention yan trust ya de moja and apple aje parliament ya si ho aje democracy ya si ho yan trust ma ba ko for amin for bi am na sorry me ka say oboya na asa democracy ensinna ensicha the parliament ni wa democracy anyway but parliament wa and a democracy and
So he was speaking there, addressing some supporters and also talking about the fact that, listen, democracy cannot stand without a vibrant, active parliament. And of course, in that same speech, he also made the point that members of parliament on the NDC end were not to go to parliament. But what would that mean for government business? Sweetie Abochi is here with me in the studio, and our guests who will be joining the conversation, John Osai Kwapong, Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He is a CDD fellow. We have Dr. Kwame Asante. He's a political scientist, also director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. We also have one who keeps his eye on parliamentary matters. He's with the Parliamentary Network Africa. I'm talking about Samuel being the executive director of that outfit. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Benjamin.
I'd like to hear from all of you so I can... Doc, I see you speaking, but I cannot hear you.
Oh, you cannot hear me. Good morning.
No, not Dr. Osai Kwapong.
Okay. Dr.
Kwame Asante, can I hear you, sir?
Yes. Good morning, Ben. Good morning, Sweetie. And then good morning to my friends on the other side.
Right.
Yes.
Samuel Bey, can we get a hi from you? All right. I think the feed to Samuel Bing has frozen. So let's get right down to it. Dr. Osai Kwapong, looking at this latest, sort of directive, though it's not coming from, the far-reaching ends of the party in terms of an official position. When you have the chairman of the party say this, it practically is official. I don't know what your take is, but let me just try Samuel Bing one more time. Sami, good morning.
Good morning.
All right,
good, Benjamin.
Good to have you join the conversation. So the first question, which I'm throwing to all of you, is what I've just made mention of, Dr. Osai Kwapong. What do you make of this coming from Johnson Asiedu Nketia in respect of Parliament and any recall?
Well, I believe the last time we spoke about this, one of the questions you threw out there was, is there is there an end to this, right? That are we going to see some sort of resolution to this crisis? And one of the things that I had asserted was that hopefully once the Supreme Court rules on the substantive question at stake, then it brings some finality to what it means and what it does, what that provision of the Constitution means, what it doesn't mean, and then now we can at least find a way to move forward and Parliament can reconvene. But it just looks like there's still no end in sight. He's the party's chairman, so I'm sure that the MPs would at least take some cue from that. Especially because the election is also close. They are all out there campaigning, probably also disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling. So it just looks like this thing is going to go on for a little bit longer than some of us had anticipated.
Samuel Bing, this directive, so to speak, from the chairman of the party, how does it sit with you?
Well, first of all, I think that it's important to note a few things. The first, for me, is that Parliament can be recalled in two ways. Now that the House has been adjourned sine die, it's to have Mr. Speaker say that, well, we need to come back, by the normal parliamentary procedure, or to have any group in Parliament, 15% of members of Parliament recall Parliament through an emergency, recall path. In both instances, it is almost practically impossible for Parliament to have any meaningful engagement between now and elections day.
Right.
We are about 3 weeks to elections. The second path of an emergency recall will be the path which would usually happen after 2 weeks when the whole process is triggered because of the constitutional provision. But of course, Mr. Speaker can recall the House and say, let's reconvene tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, because after all, the House was adjourned sine die. But around this time, when members of Parliament are when we are in the heart of the campaigning, towards elections, and we know that for our MPs, it's all about the next elections, rather than around this time, rather than coming to the House to be able to convene. It makes for practical impossibility for the House to have anything meaningful between now and elections day. However, it does not lie, in my opinion, in the mouth of a party chairman, on a political party rally platform to literally instruct, his members of Parliament and say that if Parliament is recalled, whether through Mr. Speaker, getting the House back or through an emergency recall, nobody should step foot in Parliament. I think it is becoming one too many, where we're having, members of Parliament and conversations in the Chamber of Parliament being dictated, from party headquarters in a way that becomes very untidy.
And you know what comes to mind, which I was going to throw to Dr. Asiedu. You recall when the NDC was restructuring its leadership in Parliament. It was something similar. It was the administrative arm of the party that literally communicated that, listen, we're changing, without necessarily the members of Parliament themselves deciding that move away Haruna Idrisu, come in Dr. Cassiel Atuforsen. You remember that incident as well. What picture does this paint vis-a-vis this current situation?
Well, certainly, yes, I do. And it goes to buttress the point I was making, that we are having one too many instances where the representational role that members of Parliament are to play, representing all of us. We've always maintained, and that is it, that Parliament can only host 275 people or more, depending on how things go. And all of us, the 30+ million Ghanaians cannot be in the Chamber of Parliament, and that's why we select representatives. If the Speaker recalls Parliament today and says that, look, let's reconvene on Tuesday or Thursday because there is this particular issue that we've got to deal with, urgently, it is because all of the people of Ghana must necessarily be represented in Parliament for those critical decisions to be taken. I think it is quite in a bad taste for the party chairman. Yes, you may have had some conversations with your party folks and the MPs in Parliament in private, but to put this out there, especially also for a party chairman who is a member of the Parliamentary Service Board. You know, I think that all of these dynamics, when put together, we could do our parliament a lot of good by avoiding some of these things.
Doc, your quick thoughts on that, Dr. Hassan Asante.
I think that there's a way out. The way out is that we should go back to the basics. And what are basics? We need to build consensus and dialogue. The two are critical ingredients in this type of equation, right? So I expect that however painful it may be in terms of the judgment, once you don't find any other means of what, going back to seek a review, you live with the decision of the court. And that once the court has spoken, you have no choice than continue from what the court has given to us.
But let me just interject on that point. I think it's Justice Atuguba, if I recall correctly, I stand corrected if I am not right, who said that, yes, the court's ruling stands, and that is what applies now. That is what must be adhered to. And the Speaker of Parliament's only role is to recall Parliament, but he doesn't have the power to compel any member of Parliament to show up. And that's where it gets a bit
for that
tricky,
one,
doesn't it?
that has been the practice. The Speaker will call, but if you can find, but remember, there is a 15-day rule. When you absent yourself from Parliament, the sanction that goes with it, and that also awaits you.
Is it 15 days or 15 sittings?
Yes, when you miss 15 sittings.
Right, not 15 days, 15 sittings.
No, I'm sorry. When you miss 15 sittings, then that thing can be triggered and all that. But sometimes you see there's always, tactics that they engage in Parliament. They will come a few days when they realize that they've been absent for a number of days. They show up and then that kind of thing. But bottom line is that I believe that leadership in Parliament can deal with this problem.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you for those. Oh, I thought you were done, Doc.
No, for me, once the court has spoken, all hands must be on deck to do the business of Parliament. So when Parliament is recalled, I expect that everybody will go there and then you do the work for which reason you were put there by your constituents. At this time, they cannot afford to absent themselves from Parliament because some of them are going for re-election. And if the elected get to know that you are not serious about the business of Parliament, it can cost you your seat and all that. So it is incumbent upon them to go there and then do the business of Parliament and then go into campaign and all that.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your initial thoughts. Sweetie, I don't know what you think about this because it creates quite a conundrum for members of Parliament. Your chairman has said, don't show up. Don't set foot there. Don't set foot there. And on the other hand, you serve the constituents and people are watching what is going to be your reaction because then the other side will say, there's bad faith and all of that. It leaves the MPs in a tricky situation, which is why some would say it could have been a backdoor decision, but the chairman shouldn't have mentioned it. I don't know.
I'm tempted to agree with Samuel being there when he says it doesn't lie in the power of the chairman to tell the members of Parliament not to go to Parliament. But what I'm curious to find out from Dr. John Osai-Kopong, beg your pardon, is, at the heart of this controversy was, one, the independence of Parliament and the processes, the right procedures to settle whatever issues that we have. Now, just like Benjamin said, the speakers, the Chief Justice, the Supreme Court's ruling is now what we are going with, right? Does that in any way put an attack on the independence of Parliament? Because when you listen to the commentary coming in, they're talking about how the Supreme Court shouldn't have even entertained this in the first place, but we have a ruling. Does that take anything away from the independence of our Parliament? Dr. John Osai-Kopong.
It doesn't. I had said previously that in the ruling of the court, my expectation was that they would deal with a substantive question and find a way to avoid any commentary or any sort of saying anything about how Parliament went about it, because that was my key concern, right? Interpret 97(1) GNH, but preserve the right of Parliament, to be master of its own rules and all of that. And when you read the ruling, I believe generally that the court strayed away from making sure that it didn't do or say anything that may undermine that independence, of Parliament. It took its time to really explain why 97(1) GH means what it means in the opinion of the majority. It also went at length to explain why it believed it had jurisdiction to take up the matter. So I don't think that this would undermine that independence of Parliament. Of course, if Parliament does something that quote unquote offends the Constitution, then it is only right that the courts will step in. But for now, it is no longer a judicial question that needs to be settled or resolved. For now, it's a political question, and that is, as Dr. Asante said, how does leadership come together to dialogue and build consensus so they can find a political solution to an internal matter that triggered all manner of other things.
So let me throw that political question to Dr. Kwame Asante. Doc, in this case, what would be that right move that we should be, or parliamentarians and the executive and even the judiciary should be making in this 19 days left for us to go to the polls? I mean, on the back of Johnson Asiedu Nketia saying don't go to Parliament, it's not within his power to do that. What is the right move that our parliamentarians should be looking to make now?
Yes. You don't need the judiciary to come in. The judiciary has finished its work. What is left is to how to deal with, the rest of the issues, and which is political in character. So leadership must meet with Mr. Speaker and define common grounds to this thing. Because practice
Doc,
in
when
Parliament...
When you say leadership, do you mean, who exactly are you referring to?
Majority and minority.
Okay.
They constitute the leadership of Parliament. And in any parliamentary business, they meet with the Speaker and have a common ground before they come and sit. Yes. So I think that is the only way left. They go, they meet, and then discuss issue and find a way of dealing with this. But it is important to note that these things get done and get done well with the support of their parties. All these things, the function of what happens within the political parties, right? So it is important that they also bend back to look at the leadership of the political parties, get them on board in terms of the decision, and then get the leadership to present that to Mr. Speaker, and then they have a common ground. For me now, it is left with consensus and dialogue. That's the only way. Because yes, the judicial question has been answered already, even though I disagree with respect with some of with a certain position of the majority. Because if you look at what they said, two things are not part of the ingredient of the decision of the majority. One, representation function of MPs. MPs represent not only their constituents, but their interests as well in Parliament. So you put somebody in Parliament for a fixed term of 4 years, and the person 6 months to election, he goes to change color in terms of party identity, and is in there. It is the highest, this loyalty, if I may put it that way, that you can experience. Yes, because we'll put you there for a fixed term, and 6 months to election, you are saying that, look, you want to have association with this party. And if you go through all the political parties, their constitution, they tell you that you should not do anything as a member of the party to undermine the effort of the political party. Remember that political parties also operate in Parliament based on caucus. So imagine they have a problem. They want to, for instance, say that they want to win this election, MPP, and you are in there and you have gone to, now you've changed character to be an NDC. You are going to, in Parliament, they cannot engage you because they don't trust you, divided loyalty. When you step out of Parliament, you are going to do the very things that you are not supposed to do to undermine the effort of the political party. So that is a problem. And then
Okay.
remember, we sign social contract with MPs. Go and represent us, because this is a typical NDC constituency, for instance. Say Hohoi. We believe in NDC, pure and simple. You go there, change color, 6 months to election, and you say, no, I want to be with NDC. Look, the contract has been broken, and there's a need for the people who put you there to sanction you. For me, that's it. But all these things have been settled.
Okay.
The court has spoken.
All right.
If you don't challenge it, it stays. Otherwise, you work with it. So I believe that the time is now for them to sit down and judge and find solution. That is the only way out.
Because the courts have spoken. Samuel Obey, so have we set a dangerous precedent? Have we undermined the Parliament's ability to check the other branches of government with this new ruling that is now, the new order of the day? Have we done something that posterity will probably judge us for? Samuel, maybe you can hear me. Kindly unmute.
Yes, I can
Okay,
hear you.
Yeah.
I think he missed the question.
Okay, I was asking if we've set a dangerous precedent with all of this. Have we undermined Parliament's, that key role to check the other branches of government with this new ruling that is now the order of the day, which we are all going by? And like Dr. Kwame Asasante said, if we don't challenge it, then that is what we are going with. Have we done something that posterity will judge us for?
The processes leading up to all of this, had a way of chipping, off the power, the independence, of Parliament as a co-equal branch of government. So the processes, yes, has a way of chipping off. Yes, some of us have always been of the opinion that Article 97(1) GNH needed some clear interpretation to avoid future challenges going forward, because we've been having some of these instances from the past. It's not new that we've been having these things, except that since 2020 it has been escalating, and then we saw what happened this year. So we needed some clarity on that going forward. But in finding that clarity, I really think that we have ended up chipping off the authority and mandate of Parliament. And this is not really within the remit of just the Supreme Court's recent ruling. I think in the last 4 years, a lot of, and mainly maybe the second half of this last 4 years, a lot of things have happened which has a way of undermining the institution of Parliament greatly. And unfortunately, if we do not check these things, if we do not seek, better ways of dealing with these matters, the issues of, when Parliament passes a bill, whether the presidency can say, don't you bring it to us, the issues of even the challenges relating to resource allocation to the legislature, the issues around, the encroachment by political parties and their headquarters really in the internal affairs of Parliament, and all of these issues, some of the rulings that have come out of the Supreme Court in recent past. These are quite worrying times. The often disagreement between the three arms of government, all of these matters have been left unchecked, in my opinion. And these things have a way of chipping off the strength, authority of a very important arm of government, the legislative arm of government. Okay. And I really think that we may have to start thinking as a country around how to restore this. Other than that, we would have to live with the ramifications of these things we have done to our Parliament in recent years.
But I'm curious to know, how do we actually resolve it? In your experience or expertise, how do we resolve it?
Well, many ways.
If indeed we have compromised that mandate of Parliament, how do we get it back?
In many ways, of course. Dr. Sasante mentioned the need for dialogue, really, among leadership. This is the time for leadership of Parliament to really show leadership. Okay. This is the best time to show that indeed they are the leaders of Parliament, both sides of the aisle, together, Mr. Speaker, sitting down to have conversations around these things. But also, members of Parliament must note that when these things that encroaches the space of Parliament happens, and because of partisan political interests, they sit aloof and usually support some of these things because of where it falls. The end game is that it chips off the power and authority of Parliament, and that has a way of harming the institution of Parliament in the future. And so we should not have instances where, because a particular decision favors one particular political party in parliament, you find members of parliament all supporting it. We must have an instance where MPs must be seen together with Mr. Speaker, together with the parliamentary service, protecting the institution of parliament and its rightful place in society. And these are some of the ways that we can be able to go about these things going forward.
Thank you. Then what I'm hearing is whether or not we should challenge this ruling or just let it go because this is what we are working with now. I don't know what you make.
I think that has been challenged already from the rhetoric in the public space from some legal luminaries, including Ansasari, former director of the Ghana School of Law, including the likes of Justice Atuguba himself, Chachu Chikata, the Shraj boss.
But procedurally, like, challenge it.
But, and there were disagreements which brought the NDC back to court, which was quashed. And then there's also that bit by Roxanne Nelson Dafiameko. So I think there has been some level of challenge, but whether this in itself, because you realize that when they went back and the court, the Apex Court, determined that its earlier ruling was right, that was a way of the court to say that this is where we stand. This remains our position. This morning I was mentioning to George Aisi that unless we have a Roe versus Wade situation a la Trump, where then you have a different set of judges and they are thinking differently, we may have to. For now, this is what the court has ruled, whether we like it or not. Some legal luminaries say, if you look at it, the processes and even the determination, Justice Tanko has said that this does not add up. This cannot be the ruling. He has some very strong words, but he is in the minority. He and Justice Miriam are in the minority. And so for now, what the court has ruled is what pertains, what stands, which Justice Atuguba corroborates. But gentlemen, I also want us, I think we've exhausted this matter. We'll wait to see how the cookie, crumbles, how the chips fall. But I also want us to take a quick stab at the Electoral Commission, because in recent times it has spoken about the fact that there has been a problem with serialization of its, ballot papers in the Ahafo and Volta regions, for which reason it is going to have to reprint these. In fact, according to that statement released, the EC discovered discrepancies in the automated serialization system used by the printing house responsible for producing ballots for the two regions. Some have asked, why was it just these two regions? Some have speculated. But the question is, how problematic is it that we are here? I'll start with you, Dr. Osankwapo. Dr. Osankwapo, you take the first shot.
Yeah, when the story became public, it did raise concern, right? Especially on the back of the fact that we've been talking regularly about the declining trust in the EC as per Afrobarometer, and then also the decline in confidence in the electoral system as per the NCC survey. So I found it worrying. Yes, it's good that the EC has come out to release a statement as to what happened. I've read another statement talking about the disposal of those unusable ballot papers, which would also be done would be done under the supervision of all the agents of the political parties, etc., etc. So yes, I'm glad that there's been a quick response to it. But again, I recall several weeks ago when there was something was flagged with the provisional register. I remember Dr. Bosman Asari saying, well, it was an honest mistake. But I keep saying that within this context and under these circumstances, there is really no room for quote unquote honest mistakes. And so I think it's one of those things where you would have to keep doubling your steps if it means even closer supervision of those who are printing these ballots, to really reiterate the point that we cannot afford the luxury of honest mistakes, given the context in which we are working now for this 2024 election.
You made an interesting point, and I'll use that to segue to Dr. Hassan Asante. You spoke about the trust quotient when it comes to the Electoral Commission, and we've seen it take a big tumble. But then you have Dr. Rashid Tanko Computer of the NDC, make mention of the fact that, quote, we have our agents 24/7 monitoring the printing process in all the printing houses. So our agents indicated the issue of the numbering on the ballot papers. In other words, the claim here is that they found it. I'm directing that to Dr. Asante. How do you find this? Because it appears every now and then we get some of these incidents and it takes the other side maybe to bring it up and then it becomes an issue. Dr. Asante, that's for you.
It tells you that all is not well with the areas that they have identified. So they quickly have to get into business and fix the problem quickly. And then begin to double check other places using sampling methods to see whether what we have is what is supposed to be the case. Because we don't want a situation people get to the polls and, you have wrong materials in the hands of voters. It creates all manner of uncomfortable
And some people will vote.
Yeah,
maybe their vote
exactly.
will be invalidated because
Yes.
the serialization is not proper. How did this wrong serialization get into the system in the first place? And now we are even talking of, to solve the problem, we are going to have to expend more taxpayers' money, because that's what it means if you're going to print extra ballot papers or more ballot papers to replace the erroneous ones.
That is why when you are undertaking such an exercise, you take all on board and make sure that you get the basics right. Because any breach or any problem that comes up is going to work against the quality of the whole process. And that is what you and I don't want. So I think the EC should look at all that and fix all the problems. And so that you generate what? Confidence within the system. People will go into the process, cast their ballots, and hope that at the end of the day, their ballot will stand. They don't want a situation where you exercise your franchise and that will not be counted. Let my vote count. It's critical here that whatever I put in terms of my vote, I want at the end of the day, it should be counted. And that is the tall order for EC now. They should be able to scan through all and get whatever problem fixed so that you instill confidence in the system. Remember, election hinges on what? Confidence. When people have confidence in the process, at the end of the day, whoever loses, you accept defeat and abide by the rules of the game.
Right.
But if it turns out to be something different, that is where people walk to the courts. Yes, the court is a good place to be, but where we think we can do things better so that we avoid the court and then declare the elections. And then people who said, yes, I have considered defeat. I'm going to congratulate the winner and then we'll move on. That is the spirit that we believe that must guide the conduct of EC officials and all the actors within this political space.
Samuel Bing, we have 19 days to go for the elections. And we have these problems just from about 2-3 days ago that this came to the fore. The NDC has spoken about how their agents were able to look at things and trigger this process. The EC has reacted, coming through with some of the information we now have. How concerned are you that at this point, less than 3 weeks to the elections, we're still facing problems like this? Samuel Bing. You'd probably have to unmute.
It's indeed concerning.
Okay, all right.
And I think that, yes.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm saying that it is indeed concerning, and our seniors have spoken about the angles, of concern so far as this particular matter is concerned. And I do, without seeking to belabor the point, I may not necessarily go into those areas that have already been mentioned, by colleagues on the call. But with just a few days to elections, with these things coming up in an electioneering period where trust, for the Electoral Commission, trust for the process really is a major issue. These are things that should worry all of us. For me, while I was reading the statements that were issued by the Electoral Commission on this particular subject, I was wondering, so what's going to happen to that particular print house or the print houses that were involved in this? You know, are we supposed to just go additional taxpayers' money on the subject without any remedial measures so far as those, you know, organizations that were contracted to do the to do the printing are concerned?
And we should even be looking,
really
was there some intentionality with this, or was it just a mistake?
You know, all of those certainly must be issues that must be agitating our minds, you know, because you cannot take anything for granted with an election which has such high stakes and with just a few days to elections and what have you. And I really think that the matter must be looked into in more thoroughness, you know, rather than just leaving it on the surface. It is, however, refreshing to note that, you know, some measures have been taken. We've seen the statements that have been released by the commission on how these papers have been destroyed and the signatures that have been appended to it by the various parties that had representatives in the printing houses and what have you. I think that such avoidable situation really need to be avoided so that we do not have ourselves launched into such instances that goes to heighten the mistrust that goes with our elections.
Sweetie, can you imagine though, I'm looking at this, imagine this hadn't been detected. Can you imagine the chaos that would have ensued? For example, because you have the Ashanti region being the purported World Bank of the MPP, and the Volta region being the purported World Bank of, and the Ahafo region in itself has played a certain role in terms of voting, right? So if this hadn't been detected now, and election day had come, and then all of a sudden the EC was found to be saying, oh, these ballot papers, all these votes, the serial numbers can't be, authenticated, and so all these votes, can you imagine what chaos would have? I mean, pardon me, but can you imagine if you were to say, people would not want to understand. They would think there was something fishy going on and all of that, which is why these matters ought to be looked at, scrutinized microscopically, because this could be a major problem. We found out now. I hope there are not other such instances in other places, because already the trust quotient, like I said, is like this. And if there are any such problems, I mean, God help us.
Perhaps that's why the EC is selling the narrative that they identified this mistake themselves. It wasn't somebody else that pointed it out to them, which in another way also mirrors their efforts in trying to inspire confidence and transparency ahead of the elections. But I want us to move on to something else. Let's see what time will allow us to do. Over the weekend, we saw the first John, former President John Agyekum Kufuor, should I say, waiting on the campaigns, asking Ghanaians to vote for Dr. Mamudu Bawumia, but
he wasn't the first John, though, you know that.
Oh, he's not?
Jerry John Rollins.
Oh, Jerry John, the second
You are taking his title away from you.
I'm sorry. But there was this is it the aide to Mahama, Dela Edem, made some comments, unsavory comments about the former president, and he's also come under attack. Although the party joined him in apologizing to the former president, I do want to take your thoughts on this, what it does for us, what it means, even that the former president is coming out to ask, should I say, canvass for votes for Dr. Mamudu Bawumia. Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, what is your assessment of what happened, the rhetoric of the former president, the, should I say, insults from Dela Edem, and then the party coming out to apologize and joining himself to apologize to the former president? What do you make of the whole situation there?
Yeah, the comments, as you mentioned, are quite unsavory. It's, he's an elder statesman, former president, and even beyond that, there's no place for insults in political dialogue if you disagree with someone's choice. I'm glad that the party came out very strongly to both condemn those unsavory remarks, but also render an unqualified apology to the former president. In terms of coming out to, endorse, publicly endorse Dr. Bawumia, I mean, it is his right. It's it's his party's candidate. He feels he has to weigh in. I don't recall him weighing in this strongly in previous elections, though, but whatever his reasons are, he is well within his, his right as a member of the party and as a citizen of Ghana to come out publicly and share what he believes is at stake in this election and endorse, in a very forceful way, Dr. Bawumia's candidacy for the presidency. So
right.
We'll see what that does in the next couple of days and the outcome of the election. Okay,
before we go to the other panel, Benjamin, I remember you had an interesting view on the former president coming out to canvass for voting now.
You remember?
I do want to
I made mention of, but I mean, we'll be connecting with Murtala Mohammed shortly, member of parliament. But I did say that for me, and Nanaya said, well, he comes out, but I felt it was a bit of an oddity at this time coming out like this. And some have said that it could be because these are desperate times for the MPP, but that's the political reading. I'll come to our guests shortly on that. But quickly, let me bring in Murtala Mohammed. A very good morning to you, sir.
And good morning to your cherished viewers and other panelists.
We're grateful for your time. There's been this interesting, comment put out there by your party's chairman. You are very familiar with it, that none of you should set foot in Parliament if Parliament is recalled. My guests this morning are saying, well, that may not exactly be good for parliamentary business and maybe the precedents we may want to set. What is your thinking on that? Are you going to abide? Are you going to abide by such a decision?
Exactly what? Hello?
Are you going to abide by what your party chairman says?
Then you just asked me what I make of that, and now you're asking me whether I'm going to abide.
Go ahead with both.
So these are two different questions. Look, first and foremost, I'm not too sure what exactly our national secretary said, because the whole of yesterday, I and my other colleagues were with His Excellency President Mahama, the next president of the Republic of Ghana, and we visited 4 constituencies. 4 constituencies we unfortunately borrowed, the NPP, which I can tell you that the NDC, by Allah's will, is winning those seats. Gushegu is one of the seats we win, and Tampuli would be and would not be the next MP, inshallah.
Okay.
The other one was Myang, and my kid brother Aziz certainly will be losing the seat.
Okay. So I'm sorry to do this. I get where you're going, but it's a little away from what we're discussing. And you say you don't know exactly what Johnson Asiedu Nketia said. I'm going to play it for you. No, let me play it for you so that you know what he said. Hello, is it okay? Is it okay now for me to play it for you?
I'm saying that the other one was Karaga, and the Minister for Finance will lose his seat.
Okay.
The other one was Yendi.
Okay.
Farouk Ali Mama will lose his seat.
So
that's my preliminary comment. But on what the General Secretary said or didn't say, the General Secretary...
You mean the chairman of your party? Is the chairman of your party who said this?
On what the chairman of the party said or didn't say, the chairman of the party will not speak out of nothing. I want to strongly believe that the chairman of the party would have had some discussion with our parliamentary leadership. But truth be told, what business has this government to transact again? No.
Let's move away from what that is a tangential issue. The point is
how is it?
No, I shall explain. The substantive matter is that this has been said, and you see, we are looking at not just now. We are looking at the future. What could happen in some other parliament? The point is, you are saying that he couldn't have made this decision without engaging some other leaders in your party. Is that to suggest that he did? You do know that there was some discussion with the top echelons of your party to say this? Is that what you're suggesting? Murtala, are you with me? I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
In the studio, at least listening to, at least those of you virtually, listening to the rhetoric of Murtala Mohammed. Dr. Hassan Asante, what do you make? What do you foresee that would happen if there were such a recall?
Oh, before I deal with that, I think there was a question about what President Kufuor did,
right,
and all that in terms of. Yes, I also do not support that view that politics turn into insult. Politics is not about insults. Otherwise, some people would have been in parliament a long time because they can insult better. And that's not what we're looking. We are looking at it. It's a contest of ideas. If you don't have ideas, please advise yourself. And then it is not wrong from President Kufuor to also to canvass for vote for his party. The recent election in America, you saw Clinton, you saw Obama. Yes, they were all campaigning. It's normal. But if you look at it also, it has a propaganda value. In propaganda techniques, we call this one testimonial, where a well-known person, somebody with credibility, will come and endorse a candidate or a party and said, that is the way to go.
Right.
It's normal. Then come back to the question you are
Doc,
asking.
please hold for me. Just hold for me. Please bear with me. Let's bring Murtala Mohammed back. He's joined the conversation. Murtala, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ben.
Okay, the line is way better now. You were addressing some issues.
I was saying that when you asked whether I took a decision based on my conscience and as an individual, maybe perhaps we should be worried that the likes of President Kufuor are campaigning for Dr. Baum, when he himself and everybody has no any other interest, then here they come for them. Based on the point belongs, then the form better and any administration. But my point is that I belong.
Murtala, just move a bit. I heard you say you belong to the party. Just move a bit.
I said I belong to a party, and I represent a constituency. I came with the message of the party, the vision of the party, and the people in Tamale Central overwhelmingly agreed with that viewpoint. And therefore, whatever the party decides, that is certainly what the majority of the people of Tamale Central will agree with. And I can tell you, if you were to take the position of the people in Tamale Central, overwhelmingly, they think we shouldn't even go back to parliament. They think we shouldn't.
How did you sample those opinions? How did you get that?
Well, I am doing community engagement every day. You can sense from my voice that I had little sleep. I had community engagement, and everywhere I go, assemblymen, the community themselves, think that the MPP succeeded in wasting our time when they called us to parliament. And I believe the state would have spent close to $1 million, over $1 million, on the recall alone. Every single member of parliament. Among you, the dome we are using is rented. Do you know how much parliament pays a day? Now, Afenyo Martins and his group called as they triggered Article 1123 and Standard Order 53 of Parliament. We came and they disrespected everybody and caused financial loss to the state. What is the guarantee that should they want to call us back to Parliament, that they will honor the purpose for which we will be called? Because the purpose for which we were called was disrespected, disregarded. And I expect the media to be concerned about what the MPP did and what they may.
So in other words, if Parliament is recalled, you will not be in Parliament.
I haven't told you that. I haven't told you that. I've only told you whatever decision the National Democratic Congress takes, that is the decision I would gladly and happily honor.
I see. But it would appear you would be caught between a rock and a hard place. Even if the party doesn't come out, your chairman has spoken like this. So whoever shows up would be going contrary to what the chairman has said, right?
I'm saying that there is no any going contrary. If the chairman of the party, I represent the National Democratic Congress in Parliament, the National Democratic Congress has demonstrated beyond any doubt that it is the only political party in this country now that thinks Ghana. Well,
You represent the NDC, but once you are in Parliament, while you represent your constituency, you are looking at Ghanaians in general, right? Anyway, we are grateful for your...
Of the...
We apologize. The connections are not exactly at the best, and we apologize to you because we ourselves couldn't catch a lot of what he said. But that is Murtala Mohammed, the legislator for Tamale Central. Dr. Asa Asante, you were on the floor making some submissions before I interjected. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was saying that if you look at the situation in Parliament now, if members of the minority group decide that they will abide by the statement of the General Secretary, the chairman of the party, Mr. Nketia, then we are going to have a problem because there is government business that needs to be done. So we expect that all the shades of opinions will be there to shape the discussion and then get business of government done. Having said this, it is also important for the NDC and all members of Parliament to know that we put them there. So if we want to take a decision that is contrary to our interests and aspiration, we have no option than to what? Punish you when we are going to vote. So I'm sure that will also agitate their minds in taking the right decision because we are in difficult times and you can't afford to do things that will incur the wrath of the voter. So I am sure that despite that statement from the chairman, I have every reason to believe that they'll go to Parliament because they know the consequence.
Right, right. Sweetie, before you bring in Samuel Bing, you know, as former President Kufuor spoke, and I have already shared my opinion on the fact that the statements were in poor taste. You don't use someone's health or age, you know, things related that you don't insult. And even worse if you're using age and health issues. But the former president says, if you don't vote, you may be putting yourself into slavery. I found that interesting, former President Kufuor saying that. I don't know what your thoughts are as you bring in Samuel Bing.
Well, it's the same thing of saying if you don't vote for the government you want, you'll be run or ruled by a government of, excuse my French, foolish people, because the people who would vote for the person who's not your candidate, you don't know what is inspiring their vote. There was that graphic poll this morning that said about 66% of respondents said they would vote based on the manifestos. And then there's about 33% of the people who don't know what they'll vote on. So in that case, that is where we have party favorites and, you know, a Bobokwan or the two in blue, I will vote for the person.
But if you look at, sitting right now,
yeah.
The slavery, you know, I don't know. If you look at the inflationary rate, the cost of living.
Ruled. I'm not defending
and the fact that we are back at the doorstep of the IMF.
It means you'll be ruled by people who you didn't choose to vote for you. That's slavery in a way. But Samuel Bing, you have the final word. A quick, should I say, a summary of all your thoughts, and then you can add a bit about Dela Edem and the former President John Ajekun Kufuor and his campaigning for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Samuel Bing, are you still with us? Okay. Do we still have Samuel Bing with us? If you do, please unmute. I don't think we do. So let's get the final words from Dr. John Osai Kwapong, and I'll come to Dr. Kwame Asante shortly. Doc, please give us a wrap of your thoughts.
Well, so we have, 20 days
19.
left to the election. We will see whose endorsement and whose non-endorsement and all of this.
Look for Syntex Ghana and nominate your community. The more you nominate, the better the chances of Syntex coming. Remember, it's Syntex, S-I-N-T-E-X, Syntex tank. No be any tank be tanko. The correct tank be Syntex tank. Syntex tank, strong and tough. We'll be back after the break.